Have you ever sat alone on a bus and felt eyes on you even when no one was there? These aren't just stories, they're warnings, true encounters that prove some passengers never get off. If this is the kind of darkness you crave, don't just watch, join us nor hit subscribe and step into the shadows where the real horror begins.
I've been a flight attendant for over a decade now. I've handled drunken passengers, screaming babies, engine failures, mid-air you, name it. But nothing prepared me for what happened on Flight 17 from New York to London last October. It was a red-eye, mostly business travelers and a few tourists. We took off just after 11 p.m. By 1 a.m., the cabin was dark and passengers were fast asleep. Everything was routine until I reached row 17 during my second walkthrough. That's when I saw him. An elderly man seated by the window in 17A. He had a pale, gaunt face and wore an outdated grey suit. The kind you'd expect to see in an old black and white war photo. A small leather suitcase rested on his lap. His posture was stiff, back straight, hands folded neatly over the case, eyes forward. Not asleep, just still. I greeted him softly, asked if he wanted water or a blanket. No response. He didn't even blink. I assumed he was hard of hearing, or maybe not fluent in English, so I smiled and moved on. But something about him made me glance back more than once. It wasn't fear exactly, it was unease, like something wasn't sincere. Around 3:20 a.m., I returned to offer everyone water before we began our descent prep. I looked toward 17A and froze. The seat was empty. Not just empty, clean. No suitcase, no jacket, nothing. It was like no one had been there at all. Confused, I double-checked the manifest. The name, William H. Turner, was clearly printed next to 17A. I walked the aisles, checked the lavatory, asked my crew discreetly. Nobody had seen him move. The passengers were all accounted for. And then one of the attendants said something that still makes my blood run cold. Wait, isn't 217 the flight that crashed years ago? I laughed it off at first, but curiosity got the better of me. After we landed, I pulled the flight history. Flight 217 did crash 52 years ago. Same airline, same route. Went down over the North Atlantic with 112 people on board. Among the victims was a banker named, you guessed it, William H. Turner, seat 17A. His body was one of the only ones never recovered. I filed a report. Security reviewed the boarding camera. 148 names on the manifest. Only 147 passengers visible entering the aircraft. But right near the end of the footage, you can see him. A man in a grey suit with a small brown suitcase, walking slowly past the scanner. Clear as day, except he casts no shadow. Since that night, I've heard other crew whisper about him. Some even refuse to work the 217 route. They say if you fly it overnight, you'll always see someone sitting alone in 17A, still silent, waiting to arrive somewhere he never did. I used to work ground crew at Clark International Airport in the Philippines. It wasn't glamorous, just long shifts in scorching heat, loading and unloading bags, dealing with tight schedules. I worked the late afternoon shift, which usually meant prepping domestic flights heading south. One flight changed everything for me. Flight 805 bound for Davao City. It was a humid Thursday. The tarmac shimmered in the heat, and the air tasted like jet fuel and sweat. We were wrapping up cargo loading. I was inside the hold, tightening the last net around a stack of freight containers when I heard it. Almost like the wind playing tricks. A baby's cry. I paused, held my breath. There it was again. Muffled, but unmistakably soft, desperate wail. It echoed faintly through the metal walls. I popped my head out of the hold and looked at Jorge, the other ramp agent. "You hear that?" He nodded slowly, eyes narrowing, crying. "Right, babe." We both stood there, listening. The crying didn't come from the terminal or it was coming from inside the cargo hold, behind the sealed containers. Now, you need to understand something. Cargo holds aren't places for passengers. They're depressurized, dark and cold. Occasionally, we transport live animals or special freight. But Flight 805 had none of that. I double-checked. The cargo manifest just luggage and sealed parcels. No pets, no live cargo. Still, that sound continued, wailing, then sniveling. Jorge got spooked and radioed ops. They asked us to open the containers just in case. B went box by box, suitcase by suitcase. Nothing. Just clothes, electronics, tools. No baby. But the crying kept happening, sometimes right behind us, sometimes beneath us. Then it stopped. Total silence. We both sighed in relief until we heard a soft whisper, clear as day, echoing from the metal. "Mama says it's cold down here." I swear. My legs locked up. Jorge dropped his flashlight, which rolled slowly across the floor and hit the far wall. Neither of us moved for a solid 10 seconds. Boom. Then we slammed the whole door shut and called for an inspection delay. Later, during our dinner break, I asked an older mechanic if he ever heard anything strange on Flight 805. He stared at me, then quietly said, "You know what happened in 94, right?" I didn't. He went on to explain that 31 years ago, a woman with an infant was denied boarding because her ticket was flagged as suspicious. Desperate to get home, she hid herself and her baby inside the cargo hold just before takeoff. No one noticed until after the plane landed, and by then, it was too late. The mother was found. The baby wasn't. They say maybe it was wedged in the back somewhere and overlooked during cleanup. Maybe it was never found at all. Ever since, there have been whispers among the ramped crews. Sounds of crying, whispers in Tagalog and English. Some claim they saw little handprints forming on the inside of the locked cargo door. Others refuse to work the Davao route altogether. I transferred to a different terminal the following week. I've never set foot near that flight again. But sometimes, even now, when I'm near a plane late at night, I pause, rend, and swear I hear something tiny and sad crying softly from deep beneath the fuselage. I was a junior co-pilot for a small regional airline based out of Denver. We flew mostly short domestic routes, nothing fancy. On one particular morning flight to Boise, I was paired with a veteran captain, Rob Clay. quiet guy, kept to himself. But that flight, it shook both of us. We had 41 passengers on board, all checked in, all accounted for. Skies were clear. Pre-flight checks were routine. At 6:47 a.m., we pushed back from the gate. Cabin was calm, no turbulence. I remember feeling almost bored by how normal it all was. Until the call came from the lead flight attendant. She sounded shaky. Captain Clay, we've got a situation. A man in 4D who wasn't on the manifest. Clay clicked on the intercom. Come again. He's just sitting there. Grey hoodie, dark jeans. Looks mid-30s. We checked twice. No ticket, no ID. No one saw him board. But he's strapped in, just staring out the window. We told her to ask him for identification. 5 minutes later, she called back, nearly whispering. He won't talk. He won't even look at me. Just keeps mumbling something under his breath. B. Considered diverting. But Clay decided we'd wait till Boise, radio ahead, and let security handle it. I glanced at the cabin monitor and saw the guy on the screen. Seat 4D, pale, completely motionless. And then I noticed something strange. His hoodie was wet, like it had just come out of a washing machine. His shoulders, his sleeves, even the seat beneath him looked damp. That made no sense. The cabin had been dry all morning. About halfway into the flight, the attendant called again. He's gone. I blinked. Gone. Just disappeared. I went to check on him again, and the seat was empty. But the straps were still fastened, and his seat, it's soaking wet. Clay and I stared at each other in silence for a long time. When we landed, security swept the entire plane. No trace of the man. Nothing. Even the security footage from Denver showed 41 passengers boarding. No one matching that man's description was ever seen getting on. We pulled the flight history later that night. 3 years ago, Flight 2634, same route. Same aircraft model crashed during final approach due to a sudden downburst. Only one fatality. A passenger in seat 4D. He drowned when the emergency exit door opened on impact and water flooded the cabin. They say he was trapped. His body never recovered from the wreckage, presumed to have sunk into the irrigation marshland. That next morning, Clay emailed me a photo, a still from the in-flight monitor, taken just before landing. There he was, the man in 4D, head turned, now finally looking at the camera, eyes bloodshot, skin bluish, water dripping down his chin, and something scratched into the wet window beside him, barely visible. I never landed.